June 27th, regular board meeting. Mrs. Cahall, please call the roll.
Mr. Grant?
Here.
Mr. Carpenter?
Present.
Mr. Leeds?
Here.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Here.
And Mr. Fulham.
Present.
Would everyone please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 1.3, any additions or deletions to the agenda?
No.
All right, thank you. Item 1.4, may I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Fulham.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Hagedorn.
Starts early.
Good ears.
That's
Mrs. Cahall, please call the roll.
Mr. Fulham?
good. Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye, motion carried. Moving on to section 2, discussion and comments from the board. We'll start with legislative. Mr. Leeds.
Yeah, Mr. President, we have present tonight Tom Hall, who is the state representative for our area, and he's going to discuss House Bill 99 and give us a update on where we are with Rockies Express and with being uncapped. I'm using that as a positive.
Welcome.
Mr. Hall.
Hi, good evening. Thank you guys so much for allowing me to come tonight to share a little bit of an update that I have with you guys based on the pipeline, based on some of the conversations that we've had with some of the board members here at Monroe local schools. For those of you that I have not met, my name is State Representative Thomas Hall. I am from Madison Township. Previous to this job, I was a township trustee. So very thankful for your willingness to serve in your local community. It can be a very thankless job, as a lot of you find out during your course of service. One of the first people that reached out before I got into this position, this is our first term, was Holly. And Holly, I appreciate our conversations about school funding. I've appreciated the work we've done with school funding, but we're really going to need your A game going into the next term to talk about school funding again, as it is going to come up yet again with a different speaker and different leadership. As far as the pipeline, we have met, one of the school board members and the superintendent and I met to talk about the issue at hand. This is not an issue just specific to our district, as I found out. This is a issue that faces, I believe, 14 to 16 House districts here in the state of Ohio. What I have done so far is talk with those representatives, one of which is Representative Scott Lips, who is just to the east of us with Springboro City Schools in Warren County. He and I are trying to wrangle together a group of members to either sign on to a support letter or sign on to a movement to try and get this resolved for our school districts in those specific districts that we represent. Now the problem, there's only 14 to 16 members that this affects. So there's a lot of members that don't want to touch this, that don't want to go against the pipeline, that arguably don't want to get into a fight that has no effect on them or their district whatsoever. So we are currently trying to get that list together. We're trying to get that coalition together of legislators to work together to see what we can do. Obviously, as an issue for Monroe local schools, we want to make sure that we're working with Representative Lips, who has been there, who has worked through this issue before, trying to resolve this issue. So I hope to get a better update in the next month from Representative Lips and go from there on the pipeline. Legislation, I definitely want to talk about House Bill 99 because it's been a very unforgettable journey with House Bill 99. So to not go into all of the story, but to touch on the highlights of the bill, just so you guys are aware, in 2016, Madison Local Schools had a school shooting. My father was the school resource officer at Madison Local Schools when the school shooting happened. He had chased the student outside the front doors of the cafeteria. In about 7 seconds, he responded to the shooting there in the cafeteria. After that, the school board enacted a policy to arm their staff That policy and that resolution was challenged by 5 families that sued the practice of arming staff in schools. The case reached the Supreme Court with some highly involved people on both sides of the issue getting involved. We had wrote this bill back in February of 2021, so we did not just introduce this. We've been working on this since February of 2021. And what House Bill 99 does is it clarifies a gray area of law. So when the Supreme Court ruled in June of 2021 that the teachers that were going to be carrying needed to have OPATA training, that's police officer training, over 730 hours of training. We felt like that was way too much training. We had a lot of school districts reaching out to us trying to get this fixed legislatively. The Supreme Court, when they ruled in June of 2021, they said that we could clarify this gray area of law with legislation, and that's what we did with House Bill 99. House Bill 99 was not a bill that we woke up one morning and said, hey, this is the bill we want to do. This bill went through 18 different versions, and the 18th version was ultimately signed into law a few weeks ago by Governor DeWine. House Bill 99 is a permissive bill. We are not going to any school in the state of Ohio and mandating this practice of arming teachers or arming staff for schools here in Ohio. This decision is ultimately left up to the school board. House Bill 99 also sets a minimum standard, but not a maximum amount of training that schools need to do to have this practice in their schools. We went through conversation after conversation over the last year and a half with schools that have this practice. There's no perfect number to come up with for the minimum amount of training. So what we did is we found a curriculum. We worked with our governor's office. We worked with our friends in the Senate, and we developed this bill, and we felt like this bill was the best answer after having all those conversations. The second part of House Bill 99 is Senate Bill 168, which was combined with House Bill 99. Senate Bill 168 sets up the Ohio Mobile Training Team under the Department of Public Safety. That team will be designated with 1 chief mobile training officer and 16 regional staff members that their sole purpose is to go into school districts and to make sure that schools have a training plan and make sure that they're working with schools to better their training plans in the case of an incident happening. There was a lot of backlash in the media. There was a lot of conversation about what this bill is. That is what the bill is. And I was very pleased to see the governor sign the bill after working with his office and our friends in the Senate to get it done. I'd be happy to take any questions after I finish this short little bit right here. Tomorrow I'll be heading back to Columbus. I have one more bill the governor's going to be signing, House Bill 377. That'll be our third piece of legislation that the governor will be signing into law. We have 3 other bills that are in the Senate. One of which is pretty ironic. It's a bill to get rid of August special elections. And I say that because in about 36 days, we are going to be having an August special election for our state representative race. So we did not get that done before we left for summer break, but I'm confident we can get that done when we get back. As I talked about before, the redistricting has taken up a lot of the conversations at the state level. Ultimately, the federal court had to step in. The city of Monroe is in a district with the city of Middletown, Madison Township, Liberty Township, St. Clair, and New Miami. That is the new proposed House District 46, which we are running for on August the 2nd. Early voting will start July the 6th. I know I just talked about a lot of things. I did want to just say thank you again for allowing me to come. I would be happy to answer any questions about the pipeline or House Bill 99 or any other questions that you guys may have at this time.
One question I have is on the cap.
Yeah.
What do we think will happen after 2 years? Are we going to be able to get that alleviated or stay the same or whatever? Because it's going to wreck a 5-year forecast.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a very good question. It's a question I think a lot of people are asking because there is legislation out there for ed choice, which has not gotten too far into the legislative process. I think it's House Bill 290 with the ed choice. That has not gotten far. That conversation's come up as far as the future of school funding. Speaker Cupp was obviously a huge advocate for school funding. He had worked on this issue a number of years. I think it all depends, if I'm being very honest with you, it all depends on who the next speaker is. We know Senate President Huffman will be there 2 more years at least as Senate President. At this time, the speaker's race is still very unclear. Just being open and honest with you, there's 4 or 5 House members that are running for speaker. I am not running for speaker. I would not want that job at all. Sometimes I wonder how I got this job and running for this, but I think it depends on the leadership in the next General Assembly, where it's going to go as far as the next steps for school funding for a more concrete formula going forward.
Well, give us a heads up on what we have to do.
Absolutely, and I think that right now everybody's in campaign mode, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. We are all campaigning for the August 2nd date, and then we're all going to be campaigning for the November election. I think a lot of the internal battles for speaker and for leadership will take place probably late November. We'll have a good idea going into December who the next leadership is going to be and what that team looks like and what their priorities are going into the next General Assembly.
Thanks.
Regarding the cap, so just to get your opinion on something, I mean, obviously, you know, we're shorted about roughly $7 million on an annual basis for quite a few years. So how much weight would it pull if we had community members writing letters to anybody in Columbus that would listen? How much weight is that actually going to hold?
Number one, I think it's very important to hear from your community. I think that pulls a lot of weight. Each member's different. When I get letters and things from our constituents, I always make sure to read them and respond back to most of the letters that I receive. The big thing, though, would be timing, I think, more than anything. Right now, through the end of the year, I think is going to be a crazy time as far as the elections go. And then after November, we're going to have a month and a half-ish to get lame duck situated and get things done at lame duck. But I think, like when Holly reached out, I think it was December of 2020, I was very green and I was very willing to learn. And I think doing those meetings early on really helped me and helped other freshman members that are new to this job, especially with school funding, which is the most complex thing. Mr. Guido and he has helped me tremendously, and I thank him for his years of service here in the city of Monroe, or the Monroe School Board here in the city of Monroe. But I think having those conversations early will help benefit going into next year's budget, which will take place next March, April, May, and in part of June.
So you should expect an influx of letters January of '23?
I would say before Christmas, I'd be willing to have something with you guys. I try to get out and talk to all of our school boards personally. I'd be happy to meet with any of you guys personally to talk about that issue or other issues that are affecting Monroe School Board and the Monroe school system. But I think it's just very important to hear from your local leaders more than anything, and then hear from the community as well about issues that are important to them.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we need after the election, I think we need a community night that we can bring the community into the auditorium and educate, but have Representative Hall there and anybody else we need to explain the money we're losing by being capped. And it's hurting the kids because of what we can offer, and it's hurting the public because of the taxation. So we need to get that going, and then flood them with letters.
Okay. Anything else?
I have a question I'd like to pedal back. You had mentioned the House Bill, was it 377?
Yes.
With the redistricting?
So House Bill 377 is separate from redistricting. I
Okay.
apologize for that. House Bill 377 is the second round of funding for ARPA for local governments, population 50,000 and below. There's also a number of other things that went into that legislation that the Senate put in. Ended up being like a Christmas tree when it came back from the Senate. But redistricting was a completely separate issue, so I apologize for that.
Oh, that's fine. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Okay, well, I mean,
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
thanks, Thomas.
Next up, Mr. Guido, Butler Tech.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, Superintendent. Thanks for letting me follow Representative Hall. Very good friend of Monroe, got very engaged after he won his election, and I would recommend, obviously, to do exactly what you said. Make sure everybody reaches out to him and does that. So he's worked very hard in Columbus, so thank you for that. So I just have three things I want to talk about. Obviously, the building, if you went by it, you can see it's all closed in, and I think the windows are going in soon as well, so it'll be all shut up. Staircase has went in. I know most of you guys went on the tour. I have pictures of them. If you guys want to see them, I'll share them. That's going to be kind of still the focal point of what that building is going to look like, so very excited for that. Things are going a little bit ahead of schedule. They're expecting a completion date of the beginning of October is where that stands right now. So kind of put that aside for a possible opening of that building there. So any other questions? If you guys want to go through again, just reach out to me. I am attending the FCCLA competition in San Diego. I'm going to be judging the national competition, and I leave Thursday and take the red eye back on the 3rd so I can see the fireworks here in town. So I'm excited about that.
Take it a little later, you could see it.
Yeah. What?
Come a little later, you could just see it from the
I know,
sky.
right. Well, it was either that or like literally fly and see fireworks displays through
All the way through.
Didn't want to do it. So I'll come back in the middle of the night. That'll be perfectly fine. And then lastly, we have changed our July board meeting to a work session at Butler Tech, and we're going to be discussing our strategic plan, and we're going to discuss the board's relationship to the 5 goals we have as part of our strategic plan. We have a lot of new board members on that board as well, a little bit bigger. There's 11 members. And I just wanted to take the opportunity for the board to kind of really restart again and have them understand, where do we fit in? What is our role as a board? Are we doing too much in some spots, and are we not doing it enough in other spots? So I think that I'm hopeful that that's going to be a successful meeting and energize the board and put us in the right direction and in the right seats as well. So we'll see how that works out. That's it. Any questions?
No.
No? Well, I have a question. Do you have, what's the plan for when school starts in August with the kids? Where are they going to be attending with the new
Here?
building? Is the old space still
So,
usable or
no.
until
So they were
October?
in modulars, and the modulars are gone. They're going to take their core classes at D. Russell Lee.
Okay.
And then they'll be bused during
And then move over.
so obviously, the quicker we can get that completed, I think, the less time that they're going to be spent transporting themselves over here and doing that. But good question. So we're kind of in a mad rush, obviously, to get that done as quickly as possible.
Okay.
Consider
Thank
yourself
you.
lucky that you're ahead of schedule.
Yeah.
Because most
Yes.
things aren't in today's
Yeah.
construction world. So that's good.
And then the last thing I did forget, and I just want to touch base, you guys have seen in the paper that we applied for a lot of the COVID money that the Butler County has. We are still waiting their decision on that. Our change in enrollment where we went to the lottery system, I got more phone calls this year or last year when that was done than I did ever in that enrollment process. Our goal is just to serve as many students as we can. That money helps to expand those programs to help provide more seats and our ability to provide more seats. We're just waiting on Butler County to respond. So we may also call on you guys to send out, letters to them asking for their support for the programs and they do that. So that's just like anything. As Mr. Hall said, other priorities take place and other things get kicked aside. I'm not really 100% sure what's going on with that, but we're hopeful that that will provide opportunities for all the kids in Butler County to take advantage of what we're doing. Okay?
Brett, one question I have is after the building is completed, How soon after that will you plan on having an open house for the public?
Pretty quick. I mean, we're going to obviously get the kids in there is going to be our first priority. Make sure they're settled, but I mean, we're going to do everything as quickly as we can. So it might be a little bit of a short notice for when that's going to take place, but, you know, like I said, our first priority is to get the kids and teachers in there first and not interrupt their year any more than we have to.
Well, it's certainly going to be a fantastic place.
Excited about it, yeah.
It's great.
Yeah. Okay,
Thanks, Brett.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Item 2.3, anything from finance?
Finance, we have not had a meeting where, we do have one in July scheduled.
Okay, very good. Student achievement.
Nothing to report. Everybody's on break and hopefully enjoying their summer.
All right. MEA. All right. We will move on to section 3, recognition. Mr. Buzzkirk.
All right, we have, for this evening, we have a recognition of a couple of retirees. First, we would like to recognize Patty McIntosh, and where is Becky? Becky would like to say a few words first.
This is Patty. I'm Becky. For the new board members, I'm Becky Nickel. I'm the general manager of the food service department. Welcome to the team out there. So I got last minute notice from Jesse to say a few words on behalf of this young lady here. I could go on all day about this lady here. She came on as a sub in 09, became a district employee, so to speak, in 10. I had the great pleasure of meeting her when we came aboard on 2014. There's not enough words to say about this lady here. She is a dedicated person, a loyal person, integrity, everything that you would want in part of as far as your team members would be. Currently, I have a team of 14. It's going to expand with the 2 more people coming on board, but to say the least, Patty is one of the star people that makes this team complete. She told me a year ago that she was leaving. I was not happy about that, so on and so forth, because she's not only a great worker, hard worker, somebody that you can depend upon. She was always early. She was never, hardly ever off. I can't even count on one hand how many times that she's been off since I've been here. Who's to say how much before that? The only thing I would say as far as my lady here is she got a nickname of being my Big Dipper. She always said that kids always need more food to eat, and things like that and whatnot. So we did a farewell for her on the last day of school, and of course her cake was a Big Dipper and everything like that. She never needed the money to come to work. She wanted to do it for one reason only, as that was for the kids. One of the things when COVID hit was one of the things that was one of the things that made her start thinking about leaving and stuff like that, because she was all about the kids. If she was the one smile that these kids came in, she was always on our high school side. So if they were the one child that came in here and she had that smile on there and made their day, she always wanted to do that. It was all about the kids. She does a lot for the school. She does a lot outside the school with whiz kids and so on and so forth. So when COVID hit and we did that wonderful task of packing meals and all that kind of stuff there, she was one of the people that got on the bus, delivered some of those meals on the bus when it was raining and so on and so forth to Rochester Hills, which is one of our low-income trailer parks and things like that. Always, once again, wanted to be involved with those kids. But when we had COVID here and we weren't seeing those kids on a day-to-day basis, that was something that bothered her, because that was one of the things that she was an impact on a lot of those students at the high school level and things like that. Reasons for her leaving probably were one of those things there, but also because she's a newly grandma and things like that and whatnot. So priorities do change, and I always say health and family comes first no matter what, and so on and so forth. So she will be greatly missed in our department, things like that. We'll miss her as a coworker and things like that. I will miss her as a friend because she was always there for anybody that wanted to listen, always there for advice, things like that. So God, family, and friends was always her thing there, and good luck to her in her future endeavors. And once again, I will miss her terribly. So
I will miss you too. I love the kids, so that was, yes. Would you like to come up?
We also did have another retirement, Mr. Steve Moon. He was unable to be with us this evening, but Steve has been here since the beginning of the school district, and actually prior to that, he was a Middletown employee that came over when the district split. So he has been with the district for I believe, didn't we figure out it was 33? Somewhere in there. So he has been with the district a lot. And he actually, and I'll forward this to all of you, but he sent an email this afternoon that I'd like to read. So, thank you very much to the Monroe Board of Education for the opportunity they gave me to serve the Monroe School District and the Monroe community for all these years. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and many, many memories. Literally more than half of my life has been spent working here. I am also very thankful for the opportunity that Sam and Hazel were given to attend school here in Monroe. This was such a blessing to our family, and we will forever be Monroe Hornets. It is going to be very difficult and definitely a little sad for me not being here at Monroe, but I am anxious to see what the good Lord has planned for this new season of my life. Even though I am retired, my children have graduated. I am sure I will catch some of you at the future Monroe concert or Springs events. Go Hornets, God bless, Steve Moon.
Very good.
So congratulations to Steve. And he was referring to his son and daughter, and his daughter was a senior this year that just graduated.
Very good. All right. Moving on to section 4, communications. Becky?
Gosh, I really don't like doing these, and I'm doing 2 in one night.
Yeah, 2 in
so-
one night.
Gosh.
And maybe not one set of cookies.
Hopefully you enjoy
wrong
those, so, and, because you got 2 chocolate chip and 1 oatmeal raisin, and if you don't like oatmeal raisin, you will love these. These are my special recipe,
All right.
but anyway, so tonight, one of the many things that Sodexo brings to our partnership with the district is our annual donation of $2,000. The donation can be used for what the district would think best benefits the students in the community for a better tomorrow. Prior years, this has been used for scholarships and even school levy needs. This year, it has been decided that it will be split. $1,000 will go to the high school student council, and $1,000 will go to the junior high student council. So on behalf of Sodexo, I present to these councils and to Holly our check for $2,000. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good,
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Becky.
Thanks for the cookies.
All right, moving on to section 5, treasurer's business. Item 5.1, approval of the minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes? Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mrs. Campbell. I'm getting ahead of myself. Way ahead of myself.
I know it's the summer, but.
Well, okay. Well, I'm asking the board to approve the minutes from May 23rd, 2022.
All right. Now, may I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter.
You guys are all right?
All right, Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye. Motion carried. Item 5.2.
Okay, I'm asking the board to approve the financial report for May 31st, 2022.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Fulham.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Hagedorn. Floor is yours, Mrs. Cahill.
Well, I'd like to report that we're almost to the end of June, and we're looking pretty good this year. So in spite of thinking that, well, the last forecast said that we were going to not have deficit spending, but it looks like because part of the reason is because we have these grants and they're offsetting quite a few costs in the general fund, that we're going to have, we're going to exceed by $2 to $3 million in the general fund. And we are receiving some, a lot more reimbursement for catastrophic costs. And we've never received that kind of money before. And we're expecting much more money from our Medicaid. So there's some, because the Department of Health and Human Services reimburses us for paying for medical care for students that are on Medicaid. So there's that. But I was pretty worried because of the Rocky Express, and that will have an effect in the future. We'll see how that goes. But our ESSER money was used to pay permanent substitute teachers, and that offset the purchase services that we buy. We pay for subs, so that helped. I mean, there's just been a lot of different things like that. And so anyway, we have we'll be talking about it July 13th, and looking at the past and looking at the future. And one of the things I do put on the agenda is when we're approving contracts, you're interested, I'm interested in how much inflation is impacting those. And I'm trying to look at, well, what kind of percent increase is this? What kind of percent increase is that? Just to help us, project for the future. But I'm happy with gaining something in our bank, because we are going to be dealing with inflation.
Yes.
We are told. So, and we haven't seen any of that. And I think also one more thing is, like when I was giving the talk on the 5-year forecast last time, I said we haven't gotten any bills from Duke for electric. And really, it's been 3 months, and it's usually like $27,000 for each month. And so that we'll have to, I'm sure they're going to catch up with us. They're having some problems. We're told they're having problems with their billing system. But so that also helped us this year, but we'll see how it does next year. We'll just stay on top of it, that's all I can say.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Any questions?
Do we, in that situation, I mean, we're talking about close to $90,000, is that something that we just hold what we normally would and
Well-
have that allocated for that purpose, or do we just catch up when we get caught up?
Yeah.
Are
Well,
we
so-
gonna get hit with a $90,000 bill to get caught up with whatever billing
we
problem
are.
they're gonna
I
have?
mean, I'm guessing we are. Why would we not? I can't.
But they
I've never
probably-
been in that situation before.
But they probably wouldn't demand payment of the whole 90,000 at once. They would probably just do it in.
Yeah, maybe that's
I don't know.
a good question too.
They don't tell us what they're going to do. They just say they're having problems right now.
But we're
we-
planning to pay it, I mean, we're acting as if we are going to pay what we would normally pay, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, well, what we budgeted next year, like it would be a normal
Right.
electric year. So it'll be, what we need, we'll have our budget approved again in September. And maybe by then we're going to tweak some things. We'll know more about the salaries. We will start paying salaries, and we'll know more about, because we are adding some people. So we want to see what that's like, and we'll know more if we've gotten billed by Duke and we need to up our budget for electric, and we'll see what inflation's doing. So let's give it the summer and then see what it is.
Maybe they
But we
just
have a
forgot about
balance to,
Maybe they just forgot about us.
That'd be nice.
that would be nice.
Let's stop
We
talking
strike
about
that
it.
from the record? Sorry.
Next
All
item,
right, now
please.
we're on Zoom, and now everybody knows.
Hey, July 20th, there's a meeting at Butler Tech about raising the rates for Duke, so.
Any other questions? All right, Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye, motion carried. Item 5.3,
I'm asking the board to approve the bond fund for May 31st, 2022.
may I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you,
Second.
Mrs. Hagedorn. Thank you, Mr. Fulham.
Okay, the current balance in the bond fund is $4,017,171, and all the money is where it should be.
Okay,
Thank you.
any questions?
She answered.
Yep. Okay, all right. Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye, motion carried. Item 5.4,
Next, I'm asking the board to approve the Attorney General's Safety Grant in the amount of $14,436, and also approve Fund 4999023 to account for the grant.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Any questions?
What's that be used for? That,
What's it used for, is that
Yeah,
what you're saying?
what are we gonna spend it
Well,
on?
last time we spent it on security cameras, and security, equipment, that kind of thing, and I'm not sure, we haven't met on how we're gonna use it, but it's,
We're talking about that there's some cameras, the additional security cameras. There are a couple of the automatic door locks that need to be updated. And they're also working with Monroe Police Department to possibly, one of our SRO officers is willing to do a K-9 and to use that money to not just purchase the dog, but the training that goes
Training.
associated with that. So, that would be, I think, an asset for the school district as well.
Okay.
thank you.
I have actually a meeting scheduled, is that the week of the 11th? The week after the 4th with Chief Buchanan and the SROs, and Jesse and I are going to sit down
Okay.
and talk about this.
Very good. All right, any other questions? Mrs. Kale, please call the roll.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye, motion carried. Item 5.5.
Next, I'm asking the board to approve the contract with Southwest Ohio Computer Association for technology services for fiscal year 2023 in the amount of $91,090.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Hagedorn.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Fulham. Any questions?
There's your inflation right there,
Yep, 4%.
4%.
All right, Mrs. Kale, please call the roll.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye, motion carried. Item 5.6.
Next, I'm asking the board to approve the contract with, again, Southwest Ohio Computer Association for financial and student data management and data. I didn't finish that. In the amount of $72,809.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Any questions?
Yeah, why such an increase?
Well, I didn't ask them why.
I mean, we go from the above 4% to 12.5%.
Well, it's our EMIS, it's our financial data system, it's our special ed software for tracking IEPs. Though I will say they have not raised it for a good while. I've took note of the last 2 or 3 years, it's been fairly constant, so I don't know, maybe it's overdue. I can ask them and get back to you.
Yeah, well, just ask them and see. I mean, that's quite an increase.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, because they haven't done it in the last 3 or 4 years isn't our problem.
True.
No.
Okay. Any other questions? Mrs. Kale, please call the roll.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye, motion carried. Item 5.7.
I'm asking the board to approve a transfer of remaining funds from the junior high Power of the Pen, the high school Power of the Pen, and the junior high chess club to the respective principals' funds.
Okay, may I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Fulham.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. Any questions? Mrs. Kale, please call the roll.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye, motion carried. Item 5.8.
Asking the board to approve the final amended certificate of estimated resources for fiscal year '22. It's finalized by me, and I'll submit it to the County Budget Commission.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Hagedorn. Any questions? Mrs. Kale, please call the roll.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye. Motion carried. Item 5.9.
I'm asking the board to approve final appropriations for fiscal year '22.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Fulham.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Hagedorn. Any questions?
Yeah, I got a question. How long does it take for the county to look over that when you submit?
They
that?
might meet every week, because the Budget Commission may meet every week, because people are turning these things in, or at least local governments are turning these in.
So you want to know where you stand and last?
Well, we turn these in, and then when the state auditors come, they do calculations and make sure that we're compliant with budgetary law, and they look at our estimated resources, make sure they cover our appropriations, and then they'll cite you if you budget more than your resources. That's what they want to see. So, but we're doing pretty good.
Okay.
Although, except not for grants. I think I told you all in an email that grants are the exception, because you have to overspend them before you can get the money, but all the other funds have to stay,
Yeah.
we were compliant with them.
All right, Mrs. Kale, please call the roll.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye. Motion carried. Item 5.10.
And finally, I'm asking you all to approve the temporary appropriations for fiscal year 2023. It's really our budget to get going, July 1.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Fulham. Any questions? Mrs. Kale, please call the roll.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye. Motion carried. All right. Thank you, Mrs. Kale.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
All right. Moving on to Section 6, Superintendent's Update.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. I just have a few quick items, then we'll get on to personnel. I know we have a few new teachers out here patiently waiting for their section. First off, I want to talk about the free lunch program. I know we talked about the federal government had paid for all school lunches for every student the past 2 years, and that expired, I think it was in June. Well, they just extended it. After we have advertised everybody. It is for sure through the summer, and I'm thinking that it's also going to be next school year. I don't have 100% confirmation on that yet, but it sounds like that's the direction they're moving. So as soon as I hear final word on that, we will get that information out to everybody. So, which I think is a great thing for students. The challenge that it does present is that as we, some of our title funding is based on our free and reduced lunches, and when everybody gets free lunches, they just don't fill those forms out. And so we just really need to continue to advertise that will also help them with their student fees. So we need to continue to fill those out, so it doesn't affect our funding. We've been pretty good so far.
I will say, they're letting us use 19 data now.
Yes,
So
yes.
that's a good thing.
Yeah, so we have not been hurt by it
Okay.
as of yet.
Okay.
So we want to continue.
Yeah.
The principals have also done a really good job getting communication out to the families, so.
Good.
I already talked a little bit about that safety grant. I did also just, we have a phenomenal relationship with the City of Monroe and the Monroe Police Department with our 2 full-time SRO officers. We do share one with Butler Tech, but I did want to share that Butler Tech is going to hire a full-time officer for their campus. So we'll actually have 2 full-time for our district and a 3rd one over there, which will be, additional security, which I think, is great. We had, we worked with them very closely, updating our safety plans and working with the police department. They're really good partners in that area.
Absolutely.
Last thing, it's a little quiet around here. You've got a lot of high school athletics in and out and some music stuff in and out. But other than that, the buildings are pretty quiet. The custodial and maintenance crews have been working really hard at, getting the buildings ready for next year. With Mr. Moon retiring, actually, Jesse and I met this afternoon, his replacement, the new head of custodian maintenance, and he starts July 5th. So he will be on board and getting them up to speed very quickly. So we're excited about that transition as well. So, any questions?
No?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
All right, we'll move on to Section 7, Superintendent's Personnel Business.
It's recommended approve the resignations from the following employees.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Fulham. Any questions? Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye. Motion carried. And item 7.2,
It's recommended the board approve the following new employees.
may I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank-
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Fulham. Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. And how many,
See at least two, maybe
Raise your hand.
yes,
two. Get the pins ready, Mr.
Yep.
Pin.
got the pins. All right.
Should we make our,
Yes, we'll make our motion. yeah.
say we gotta
Okay,
make it
get a little
official?
excited.
Gotta make them official first.
I gotta, we're just being prepared. Any questions? All right, Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter? Mr. Carpenter.
Oh, man.
Missy?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye, motion carried. All right, now.
We need a group picture. Ready? All right. Cheese on three. 1, 2, 3.
I'd like to say welcome, everybody.
Wait, you guys are leaving?
What?
Wow, no, just kidding. Go ahead. Enjoy your summer.
Man.
Gotta get out of here. I was gonna buy him ice cream. I was gonna take him to Swaffies.
I got cookies.
Item 7.3.
It's recommended the board approve the following extracurricular contracts.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. Thank you,
Wow.
Mr. Leeds. Just got a few of those.
Should we discuss each one?
Yes.
If you would like.
This takes care of everything through the fall season, is that correct?
It's got some winter on there as well, so it's got a little
Oh, yeah, I
bit
do
of
see a couple
everything,
basketball.
so.
All right.
Eric tries to get as much filled in.
Still trying to figure out a band assistant, and also flagpole.
Okay.
Two big ones to call that.
Okay.
Are you asking for volunteers, or are you
Hey,
asking?
Dave will do it. Dave's tore out a flag.
Hey, I can do it from the press box. Yeah, Brett.
Yeah.
Brett. I'll give you a cell phone. I'll text it to you.
No, we'll just sign him up right now. I heard him say it.
All in favor, say aye.
Is that official?
good. All right, any questions?
I just want to welcome all of our new folks and to our volunteers as well. I know there's several on there. I want to especially thank you for the time that you guys put into your respective athletics, and it's really appreciated.
All right. Mrs. Kale, please call the roll.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mr. Grant?
Aye. Motion carried.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Our-
Congratulations
our-
on the head coach.
Our athletic director, building administrators, Jesse, they've done a phenomenal job this spring getting all our positions filled. We've got a lot of I'm excited about a lot of the new people coming on board, so.
Good thing. Item 7.4.
It's recommended the board approve the following technology specialists for the summer, rate of 12 an hour. It's actually 2 Butler Tech students. One of them is a Monroe student.
Okay. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Hagedorn.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Fulham. Any questions? Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye. Motion carried. Item 7.5.
It's recommended the board approve hiring Cinda Pelfrey as the summer secretary at the board office at the rate of $17.60
She can
an
shut
hour.
this whole thing down
She
right
couldn't
now.
she couldn't get enough of us, so she decided to join us for the summer.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Thank you, Mr. Fulham. Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. Any questions?
Thank you, Cindy,
I will
for all
say
you do.
she's a joy to have.
Yes.
What was that?
She's a joy to have.
Yes.
We agree.
Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
Yep. Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Grant?
Aye. Motion carried. Item 7.6.
It's recommended that the following employees, they actually were already renewed, but the names were mistakenly left off last agenda, so there happens to be one on there that maybe
Can
that
you
was
say oopsies?
purposeful.
Yeah, I
I'm
think
not
it's-
sure if that was- but it's just a little bit of cleanup from classified employee
Aye.
contracts.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Hagedorn.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Any questions? Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Abstain.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye. Motion carried. Item 7.7.
It's recommended the board approve the stipend for the teacher student teacher from Miami.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Fulham. Any questions? Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
And Mr. Grant?
Aye. Motion carried. And Section 8, Superintendent's Other Business, 8.1.
It's recommended that the board approve the following donations.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you,
Second.
Mr. Fulham. Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. Any questions?
Thank
Thank you
you.
for the
Thank
Yes,
you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank
We
you.
appreciate it.
Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Grant?
Aye. Motion carried. Item 8.2.
This is with my privilege to recommend to the board to approve the 2022 Monroe High School graduates.
May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds.
Third.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter.
I was gonna let you have it, but you jumped in there.
It's all
Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mr. Grant?
Aye. Motion carried.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Officially.
Congratulations.
And then item 8.3.
Approve a contract with Fidelity Nursing for substitute nurses for next school year.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Hagedorn.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. Any questions? So when we bring them on, it's for 3 hours, it has to be for a minimum of 3 hours, is that correct? Okay.
And that's another inflation, right?
Yes.
12% increase.
Yep.
May I, Mrs. Kale, please call the roll.
Mrs. Hagedorn,
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mr. Fulham,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye. Motion carried. Item 8.4,
Approve a contract. It's recommended to approve the contract with the Butler County ESC for coaching for administrators, some professional development, and coaching for our admin team. And this is paid out of ESSER funds.
may I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Fulham.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Any questions? Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Fulham,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn,
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye. Motion carried. Item 8.5,
It's recommended the board approve the purchase of some new servers from Ford's Edge, and has the cost there.
may I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Hagedorn.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. Any questions?
Just getting two of them.
Tony, just two?
That's all we need right now.
Okay.
Skill server to take over on virtual machine and file server.
Hence the reason the difference in pricing. Yeah. All right. Well, you answered my question with that, so. Any other questions? All right, Mrs. Kale, please call the roll.
Mrs. Hagedorn,
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mrs. Fulham, Mr. Fulham,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye. Motion carried.
You're just gonna get all of us tonight, aren't you?
No,
Molly?
not me.
Too many roll calls here.
Item 8.6,
All right, so we'll go through them, but the next five, six of them are annual contracts that we have with the different ESCs for different services. And the reason we use the different ESCs, it depends on, not all of them offer all the different services, and Nancy does a really good job of looking for the best price, the best people, so.
okay?
The first one is for the Butler County ESC, to provide orientation mobility services, teacher of the visually impaired.
May I have a motion?
So moved. So moved.
Thank-
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Fulham. Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. And I see that this one is a decrease of 66. Okay, there you go, Mr. Leeds.
What's that, yeah?
Decrease.
Yeah.
That's probably due to less students, I would imagine, not to,
So I have a question on all these. Is it the same teachers or people that come back every year, or is it going to be different
it depends.
employees?
So some of them on here, you'll see like a school psychologist. We love consistency, but they move on and do other things, so.
Okay.
We try to work with them to get the same people back, especially if we really like them, but it just,
Okay.
there's movement at the ESCs just as well as there's, transition and turnover with the other buildings, so.
Okay.
Hey, Robert, are you wanting to go through each one of these individually, or are you wanting to block these?
You want to block them, you're more than.
You want to block them? Yeah. All right, we can block.
Like
So
an offensive line.
we'll block item 8.6 to 8.11, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. May I have a motion to block items 8.6 to 8.11?
So moved.
Thank you,
Second.
Mr. Fulham. Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. Is there any questions on any of those items? No? Okay. All right, Mrs. Cahill, you call the roll.
Mr. Fulham,
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye. Motion carried. And we will move on to item 8.12.
It's recommended the board approve the food service addendum with Sodexo, and this has to do with the price increase for student lunches that we talked about last time. This is just a formal hoop to jump through for this ODE, although what I shared earlier may be
Maybe.
a moot point. but-
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, may I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Hagedorn.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Fulham. Any questions? Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mrs. Hagedorn,
Aye.
Mr. Fulham,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter,
Aye.
Mr. Grant.
Aye, motion carried. Item 8.13.
It's recommended the board approve an addendum with Sodexo for the facilities engineering operations manager. One-time payment of $20,000 to be grant funded, and again, that is the replacement of our head of custodial maintenance. I think I shared earlier that we have been very fortunate for the last few years as Steve was a retiree hire, which saves the district some money there, so.
Okay. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Hagedorn.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Any questions? Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
Mr. Grant?
Aye. Motion carried. Item 8.14.
It's recommended the board approve a resolution of urgent necessity and agreement with Skanska USA Building for the construction service, adding partitions to the area to be used in the classroom space. This is the construction that we are doing this summer to make additional space in the library, the trainer's room, and they call it the health room to do this summer. And as everything lately with construction, the process is so delayed, and we actually had a construction company that we have a really good, long-standing relationship that Jesse just didn't ever hear back from. So he reached out to Skanska, who's doing the Butler Tech facility, and they have been really on top of things and great to work with so far. So we've been very impressed, and they're ready to go. So that's good news.
Good. And that, everything will be, I guess,
Yep.
before I ask a question. I may have a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Hagedorn. And everything will be done for school, we hope?
Sure.
Okay.
No, they have said that, if they can get started, that there should not be an issue, but I will not make any promises
No,
when
trust
it
me.
comes to construction.
Nope,
No.
I
As
understand
Mr.
that.
Prohaska's back there.
I will say this about this group, they can get materials.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know how.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had a couple design questions, and I said, whatever is done more quickly.
Yeah.
As far as there was a couple, do you need windows in this area or not? And I said, if windows are going to hold up the building and the completion, then no windows, so.
Are they going to start in one section, or are they going to work simultaneously? Do you know?
So in terms of linear footage of wall, it's not too much.
No.
Really, most of the community center and then the health mentoring. So I don't envision people will probably same crew on similar things, significant things.
I mean, in the grand scheme of things, this is a very small project for
Yes,
these guys. They're gonna
yes.
knock this
That was
thing
my
out.
hope when I went there. I said, you're probably got a crew standing around doing nothing.
Yeah.
You send him up the hill.
Yeah, I
And
mean-
he laughed. And they've been very helpful. so.
All right, good, good.
Okay.
When you find a good construction company that's easy to work with, and that's key.
We waited
I
until
was
Mr.
really-
Guido left to tell him we're stealing the crew.
Yes.
Yeah,
from,
I was really
Tech.
impressed when we did the tour a few months back of the new building. I was really impressed
Yep.
by their people, professionalism, and obviously doing a good job staying ahead of schedule over there. So that's nice to hear, and they're right here. So
Yep.
good.
Good. Any other questions? Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mr. Grant?
Aye. Motion carried. Item 8.15.
It's recommended the board approve a resolution of urgent necessity in purchasing furnishings for the spaces that we partitioned for the classrooms and the workspace from schools in for the amount of $37,550. That will furnish any additional furnishings for all those additional spaces, as well as, is that the Main Street furnishings as well? Yeah, so the additional cafeteria overflow that we talked about for
Yep.
Main Street.
Is there any replacement that we're having to do that's tied into this as well, as far as furnishings, or is this?
So there's some of the old chairs in the media center we just aren't functional. They're
Yes.
stacked and the footprint is funky. So that is a replacement. Almost everything else is new.
Okay.
So that's really the only thing we replace.
Okay.
Can we trade in that stuff down at the garage and get our money back and then
Yeah.
pay for this stuff?
Tom Leeds Saturday sale.
Yeah, we're-
We're throwing a few more
We can put it on Mums in Monroe.
Possible.
No, not that one. Just Mums in Monroe where they sell everything.
Yeah.
I have no idea what anybody's talking about.
All right.
Oh, you guys,
May I have a motion, please?
so moved.
Thank you, Mrs.
Second.
Hagedorn. Thank you, Mr. Fulham. All right, any questions? All right. Mrs. Cahall, please call the roll.
Mrs. Hagedorn,
Aye.
Mr. Fulham,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter,
Aye.
Mr. Grant.
Aye, motion carried. And item 8.16,
It's recommended the board approve a 24-month purchase agreement for the supply of natural gas.
may I have a motion, please?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter.
So moved.
Rookie.
My bad.
My first
Second.
time. Thank you, Mr. Fulham. Any questions?
Yeah, why don't we get this from Rockies at no cost?
Put a line in there. Touche.
I do want to,
Touche.
yes, I would like to share that how long have we been working with that consultant, Jesse? A number of years?
Since shortly after we did energy optimizers, stuff that you work with, that lights out.
And so they are advising us to, if you do a much longer contract, you're going to get a little bit better pricing, but it's so volatile right now that he advises not to go out longer than that. It'll lock our price in for a little bit of a lower rate, but then that'll let us reevaluate in 2 years who knows what it's going to be at that point,
Yeah.
so.
Any questions? Mrs. Cahall, please call the roll.
Mr. Carpenter,
Aye.
Mr. Fulham,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn,
Aye.
Mr. Grant.
Aye, motion carried. Item 8.17,
It's recommended the board approve the math textbook adoption that was presented at the last board meeting.
may I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Hagedorn. Any questions?
Does that go into effect this fall?
Will we get the materials prior to school, I believe? Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, Mrs. Cahall, please call the roll.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn,
Aye.
Mr. Fulham,
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter,
Aye.
Mr. Grant.
Aye, motion carried. Item 8.18,
It's recommended the board approve the 22-23 junior high student handbook.
may I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Fulham. Any questions?
Any significant changes?
Nope.
Thank you.
Mrs. Cahall, please call the roll.
Mr. Carpenter,
Aye.
Mr. Fulham,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn,
Aye.
and Mr. Grant.
Aye, motion carried. 8.19,
It's recommended the board approve the contract with Fort Edge for server management services for 22-23 school year.
may I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Hagedorn.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Fulham. Any questions?
One thing that I've got a problem with on this server deal is this best effort after hours. That could be, best effort means I'll get it next week. That's an open-ended contract to me.
You've been pretty happy with their management services, haven't you, Tony? Yeah.
Have we
I
had
know
any
that-
sorry, go ahead, Tom, sorry.
You know, I know there's nothing we can do about it, but just,
We have had some evening after hours, 2 hours, things that they've been on.
Yeah.
So I don't, we've not got the sense that they're sandbagging. I mean, they're monitoring all the time.
No, they do have a very,
Okay.
they have to say that was first, really, they serve the problem, but normally we do a couple hours.
Okay.
Have we ever had any major outages?
As far as service, it's power related.
Yeah.
These are all on-site, right?
I have to say, I've only been here a year, but it's light years ahead of where I came from, so, as far as the servers not being down and very little issues.
I just saw it in the contract, just drew my attention to it.
Yep.
We're used to doing that in the contract. Okay.
Any other questions? Mrs. Cahill, please call the roll.
Mrs. Hagedorn,
Aye.
Mr. Fulham,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter,
Aye.
Mr. Grant.
Aye, motion carried. 8.20,
That is just a listing of upcoming events.
all right. Before we move to section 9, we will go with comments from the board. We'll start with Mr. Leeds.
One thing I have is I'm glad to see that we're moving forward on this, getting this group down here from Butler Tech to help us out in the construction that we've got.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good for the community. And good for
We
school.
are definitely looking at forming relationships with some different construction companies as over the next 2 to 5 years, we're going to have some definite needs. so.
Definite, right. But, things moving forward, and it sounds like we've got everybody hired, except a few more for the school year coming up, so.
Very close.
That's great. That's great. That's all I've got.
All right. Debbie?
Yeah, so I was pretty excited for the language art clubs that did their trip to Europe.
Yeah.
The pictures I saw looked amazing, and I was just, to be honest, a little jealous. haven't been over to Europe, and I was pretty excited for the kids to have that life experience, to go over there, especially with their friends and the teacher chaperones, without parents. What? And then just to have that experience, I think it's amazing. So I'm really glad that they had that opportunity, and I really hope that they get to do that again.
Yeah.
Well, I know, hasn't it been canceled the last few
Yes.
years? Due to COVID, so, yeah, you're right. It
This
was
has
great
been
that they were able to finally get
3
that.
years in the planning, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
We'll
I
send you
was.
as a chaperone next time.
Oh, maybe. So I was pretty excited for them. So that's really all I've got for.
All right. AJ?
All right, well, it's time for the summer version of high fives from around the hive. All right, high five to our high school students who visited Europe earlier this month, along with Mrs., I'm going to pronounce this wrong, I think. Is it Chernobyl? Chernobyl? I'm sorry, I don't know. You know anybody? Chernobyl. I'm not even. Chernobyl. Okay, I apologize to Mrs. Chernobyl. Miss Alexander and some parent chaperones. 27 students got to travel to Spain, France, and Germany, making stops in Madrid, Paris, and Munich, as well as the Alps. So very cool. And yeah, I would definitely like to do that at some point. High five to Emily Rose, Heather Esau, Mackenzie Johnson, Adam Duff, Stephen Jang, and Dylan Kazubowski, who were recently awarded scholarships from the Kiwanis Club of Middletown. Very cool. Congratulations to those graduates. High five to all of our staff for all that was accomplished during the 22-23 school year. It's so refreshing to hear all the stories from students and families each year about how thankful they were for their teachers, my daughter included, who absolutely adored her first grade teacher and is ready to move to the big building. And those teachers and staff, they're really the reason why Monroe is truly the best in the area. I hope that everyone enjoys their summers and look forward to seeing everyone in the fall. And high five to Steve Moon and Patty McIntosh on your retirement. Thank you for all that you've done for the district. I wish you the very best in your next chapter.
Very good.
And that's it.
All right. And now, Mr. Carpenter.
Not much. Just hope everybody's enjoying their summer. Just want to thank Representative Hall for stopping in and updating us all on what's happening up there in Columbus. I encourage all of you to reach out to Thomas as well. He's a great guy, easy to talk to, and he works hard to make sure that he hears us and tries his best to advocate for us with his peers. But yeah, and
Okay. And there's nothing for me, so the first.
Sure. Everything okay?
Yes.
we have it on video too.
Yes, exactly. Now, I will second what Mr. Carpenter said about Mr. Hall coming in for an update. So, and I agree with you, Mr. Leeds, in regards to maybe having a town hall meeting, maybe by the end of this year or the beginning of the year, to maybe educate our community in regards to the funding issue that we have, because I think most people know about it, but I don't think they know the depths of it. So it would be good to educate them, and then maybe we could have a form letter that they could use and send and take to the, and send off to our legislators.
Yeah.
So, all right, other than that, that is it for me. And with that, item section 9 is recommended that the board adjourn to executive session to consider items that are a statutory confidentiality exception, revised code 121.22 G5. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Fulham.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Hagedorn.
No action?
Oh, I apologize. No action will be taken. Thank you, Mr. Lees, for the reminder. And Mrs. Cahall, please call the roll.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye.
Mr. Grant?
Aye. Motion carried.